Want more HFY stories? Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications.
The Starlight Asylum was a tomb of steel and silence, orbiting a dying star that bled crimson light across its hull. Elias Thorne hadn't slept in 7 years. His insomnia wasn't a curse, it was a key. When the galaxy's greatest minds failed to navigate the Nightmare Veil, a dimension of pure terror that had swallowed entire fleets, Elias was the only one who could chart a course through it. The Shedders, a warrior species revered for shedding their exoskeletons upon enlightenment, believed softness was strength. But they were losing their war against the Veil, and Elias was their last hope. He stood before the Veil's gateway, a swirling vortex of indigo and black, his hands trembling not from fear, but from exhaustion. The Shedders' ambassador, Kithra, her chitin-smooth skin glowing faintly, watched him. "You are the only one who can see the path," she said, her voice like rustling leaves. "The Veil responds to you, human." Elias nodded, his mind a labyrinth of sleepless nights. He stepped into the darkness, and the galaxy held its breath. Inside the Veil, reality unraveled. Shadows writhed like living things, and Elias's own fears manifested around him. He saw his childhood home, burning, and heard the screams of people who'd never existed. The Shedders had sent their finest warriors with him, but they were useless here. Their rigid discipline couldn't withstand the Veil's chaos. Kithra, however, moved with eerie grace. Her exoskeleton had been shed long ago, leaving her vulnerable but revered. "The Veil feeds on emotion," she murmured, her voice steady despite the horrors around them. "Yours is the only anchor it cannot break." Elias knew it was true. His insomnia had made him a vessel for the collective dread of humanity, a reservoir of fear the Shedders couldn't comprehend. As they navigated, Elias felt a shift. The Veil wasn't just random terror, it was sentient. It was hunting them. Kithra's warriors fell one by one, their forms dissolving into the darkness until only she and Elias remained. "It's drawn to your fear," she said, her eyes wide. "You must let it in." Elias hesitated, the weight of his insomnia pressing down on him. If he let the Veil in, he might never escape. But if he didn't, Kithra would die. He took a deep breath and opened his mind. The Veil poured into Elias like a tidal wave of nightmares. He saw his worst fears made flesh: abandonment, failure, the crushing loneliness of 1,000 sleepless nights. But as the darkness consumed him, something unexpected happened. The Shedders had taught him that softness was strength, and in his vulnerability, Elias found power. The Veil recoiled. It couldn't understand a being who embraced fear instead of fighting it. Kithra watched in awe as Elias's form flickered, his presence expanding like a ripple in the void. "You're becoming part of it," she whispered. Elias realized the truth. The Veil wasn't just a dimension, it was a being, and it was lonely. The Shedders had tried to conquer it, but Elias was connecting with it. He wasn't fighting the nightmare, he was befriending it. The darkness around them softened, swirling into patterns that weren't hostile but curious. Kithra's exoskeleton began to glow, a sign of enlightenment. "You've done it," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "You've navigated the Veil." But Elias knew the cost. He could never leave. To save the galaxy, he had to become the Veil's anchor. Elias's body flickered between reality and the Veil, his mind stretched thin. Kithra stayed by his side, her presence a rare comfort in the chaos. "You don't have to stay," she said, her voice soft. "The galaxy will find another way." Elias shook his head. There is no other way. The Veil had become a part of him, and he a part of it. He could feel its loneliness, its hunger for connection. The Shedders had misunderstood it entirely. They'd seen a monster, but Elias saw a friend. As days bled into eternity, Elias's influence grew. The Veil began to change, its nightmares softening into dreams. Ships that entered it no longer vanished. They emerged unharmed, their crews shaken but alive. Kithra's people called him the Dreamer, the bridge between worlds. But Elias knew his time was running out. His body was failing, consumed by the Veil. Kithra stayed with him until the end, her hand in his as he faded into the darkness. "You saved us," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Elias smiled, his last thought a prayer of gratitude. The Veil was no longer a prison, it was home. Years passed, and the Starlight Asylum became a pilgrimage site. Shedders and humans alike came to pay their respects to the dreamer, the human who had sacrificed himself to save the galaxy. Kithra, now a revered elder, often visited the Vale's gateway, her exoskeleton gleaming with enlightenment. He taught us that softness is not weakness, she told the young warriors. It is the strongest force in the universe. The Vale had changed too. It no longer swallowed ships. It welcomed them, a silent guardian of the stars. Elias's presence lingered in its depths, a gentle whisper in the dark. Sometimes, on sleepless nights, Kithra could feel him, his warmth a reminder of the bond they'd forged. The galaxy had been saved, but at what cost? Elias was gone, his body dissolved into the Vale, his spirit forever intertwined with the dimension he'd tamed. The Shedders called it the dream, a living testament to the power of empathy. And in the quiet moments between stars, Elias's voice could still be heard, a soft murmur in the dark, reminding them all that even in the deepest nightmares, there is light. The last transmission from the Starlight Asylum was simple. The dream is awake. Kithra stood alone on the observation deck, watching the Vale swirl like a nebula of forgotten dreams. The Shedders had built a monument to Elias, a statue of a human figure reaching into the darkness, its expression serene. You were right, Kithra murmured to the stars. Softness is strength. The galaxy had moved on, but the dreamer's legacy endured. Ships now navigated the Vale with ease, its terrors transformed into wonders. And in the heart of the dimension, Elias's presence remained, a quiet guardian watching over the galaxy he'd saved. The Shedders had learned that true enlightenment wasn't just shedding exoskeletons, it was shedding fear. And Elias, the insomniac who'd become the galaxy's savior, was proof that even the smallest among them could change everything. As the dying star's light faded, Kithra closed her eyes, and for the first time in her long life, she dreamed. And in that dream, she saw Elias, smiling, his hand outstretched, leading her home.